Tensions between the US and Canada are reaching a breaking point, prompting Canadians to take action, starting with their shopping carts. A powerful wave of patriotic spending is sweeping the nation, with hundreds of thousands pledging to abandon American brands in favor of Canadian-made alternatives. The rapidly growing movement, driven by passionate citizens, has surged online, amassing over 500,000 members. Social media is flooded with shoppers proudly displaying their all-Canadian grocery hauls, while supermarkets prominently showcase Made in Canada labels. But this isn't just about skipping Starbucks or replacing Kraft mac and cheese. It's an economic stand, a bold declaration that Canadians refuse to be pushed around. With the February 1st deadline approaching, anxiety is mounting over US President Donald Trump's looming threat to impose a hefty 25% tariff on Canadian goods. If enacted, the tariffs could send prices soaring on everything from food to fuel, creating economic uncertainty. In response, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is standing firm, with his government preparing countermeasures to protect Canadian businesses. But while politicians exchange blows, everyday shoppers are leading a grassroots rebellion of their own. Across the country, grocery stores are adapting to the shifting consumer sentiment. Some retailers are redesigning aisles to spotlight local products, while independent grocers are rolling out Made in Canada tags to help consumers make patriotic choices. And it's not just grocery stores. Restaurants, cafes, and small businesses are proudly championing Canadian suppliers, further fueling the movement. Shopper Peggy Chambers says she now triple checks labels before adding anything to her cart. "I've always tried to support Canadian products, but now it feels like a responsibility," she explains. "As long as it's not made in the US, I feel like I'm making a difference." Meanwhile, viral shopping guides are taking over social media, providing Canadians with a clear roadmap for avoiding American imports. These lists pit major US brands against their Canadian counterparts, encouraging shoppers to choose homegrown alternatives for snacks, condiments, and household essentials instead of American staples like Campbell's Soup, Lysol, and Pepsi. However, experts caution that it's not always so straightforward. Many US brands source ingredients from Canadian farmers or rely on local manufacturers, blurring the line between domestic and foreign goods. Still, for many Canadians, this movement is about more than just labels. It's about taking a stand. It all began with the decision by US President Donald Trump. His threat to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, along with an additional 10% on energy exports, sent shockwaves through Canada's economy. But instead of waiting for politicians to negotiate, everyday Canadians took matters into their own hands. Across the country, shoppers are making a conscious effort to buy Canadian, and social media is buzzing with tips on how to avoid American brands. Viral lists compare US products to homegrown alternatives, while grocery stores are joining the movement by adding special tags to highlight Canadian-made goods. For some, the switch is simple. Dairy, meat, and in-season produce are almost always local. But when it comes to packaged foods, cleaning supplies, or fresh fruit in the winter, the choice isn't always as clear-cut. Still, Ottawa resident Don Profit captures the new mindset. "If it's made in Canada, it's going in my cart." This shift in consumer spending is about more than just groceries. It's an act of defiance, a way to make a statement. Even Canadian officials are voicing their support for the movement. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has openly encouraged Canadians to support local businesses, while his government prepares countermeasures against Trump's tariffs, targeting billions of dollars worth of American goods. However, not everyone is celebrating. Some experts caution that buying Canadian isn't always as simple as it seems. Many American brands depend on Canadian farmers and manufacturers, meaning a boycott could unintentionally hurt local jobs. Food industry expert Sylvain Charlebois emphasizes the importance of understanding a product's origins. If you just look at the brand name, you might think you're making the right choice, but you could be cutting off Canadian workers without even realizing it. Despite these concerns, many consumers remain committed to the movement. Peggy Chambers, a longtime advocate for Canadian-made goods, believes the extra effort is worthwhile. It takes time, but I'd rather support my own country than put money in American pockets, she says. Of course, not everything can be sourced locally. Canada's long winters mean fresh fruits and vegetables often need to be imported. That's where another tip comes in: frozen foods. Many frozen fruits and vegetables are packaged in Canada, making them a smart alternative when fresh options aren't available. Beyond grocery shopping, the economic impact of this shift is significant. While Canadian farmers and manufacturers experience a surge in demand, businesses reliant on U.S. trade are bracing for challenges ahead. Pierre Olivier, who runs a model train company in St. Thomas, Ontario, is deeply concerned. His business relies almost entirely on American customers, and if tariffs take effect, he may be forced to raise prices, something that could drive his customers away permanently. And it's not just small businesses feeling the pressure. If the Buy Canadian movement continues to gain momentum, major retailers could struggle to keep up with the demand for local products. Prices may rise, choices could become more limited, and the ripple effects could extend across nearly every sector of the economy. Canada, however, isn't standing idly by. In response to Trump's tariff threats, Trudeau's government is preparing retaliatory measures of its own, targeting billions in U.S. exports. The strategy zeroes in on products from politically sensitive states like Florida orange juice and Kentucky bourbon in an effort to pressure Trump's allies into rethinking the trade war. But this dispute goes beyond shopping habits and economic policies. It's beginning to affect everyday life. Reports have emerged of Canadian crowds booing the U.S. national anthem at sporting events, and for many, the sentiment is clear. What was once a close alliance now feels like a betrayal. Energy remains one of Canada's most powerful bargaining chips. As the largest supplier of crude oil to the U.S. and a key provider of electricity to northeastern states, Canada holds significant leverage. Some leaders, including Ontario Premier Doug Ford, have even suggested cutting off energy exports as a way to counter U.S. trade policies. However, not everyone supports that approach. Provinces like Alberta, which rely heavily on oil exports, warn that such a move could backfire, potentially harming Canada more than the U.S. The economic ties between the two countries are deeply intertwined, making any attempt to separate them as difficult as trying to pull apart two blended colors of paint. The process is proving to be complex, messy, and full of unintended consequences. As Canada navigates this escalating trade standoff, the challenge is clear: pushing back against unfair tariffs while avoiding damage to its largest trading partner. The U.S., meanwhile, is attempting to assert economic dominance without provoking a full-scale retaliation. Behind the scenes, government officials are scrambling for a solution. High-level meetings, urgent strategy sessions, and discreet back-channel negotiations have been underway for weeks. Yet, as tensions rise, one critical question remains: how far is Canada willing to go? Some argue that counter tariffs are the only way to force the U.S. to take notice. Others worry that escalating the dispute could backfire, creating uncertainty for businesses and shaking investor confidence. I think the U.S. was hoping Canada wouldn't fight back, says one economic analyst. They expected some frustration, sure, but not a full-scale response. If Canada retaliates, the fallout won't be one-sided. It will hit both economies hard. This dispute has grown beyond trade. It's now a matter of national pride for many Canadians. Every dollar spent on homegrown products feels like a small act of defiance, a statement that Canada doesn't need the U.S. to thrive. However, the reality is more complex. Canada's economy is more dependent on the U.S. than many realize. The two nations have developed industries side by side, with supply chains so deeply intertwined that boycotting American goods isn't always as simple as it seems. Many U.S. companies rely on Canadian suppliers, just as Canadian businesses depend on American partners. Take the tech industry, for example. While Canadian startups may want to support the Buy Canadian movement, they also rely on American partnerships, investors, and customers. Cutting ties with the US could mean fewer opportunities and lost revenue. At the same time, other industries are starting to recognize both their strengths and vulnerabilities in this shifting economic landscape. Agriculture remains one of Canada's strongest industries, but harsh winters make it difficult to rely solely on homegrown produce. The push for more Canadian-grown food is fueling investments in greenhouse farming and vertical agriculture, though scaling up these efforts will take time. Dairy farmers, long at the center of US-Canada trade disputes, are experiencing renewed interest in their products. With more Canadians avoiding American dairy brands, local farms are expanding their reach and even exploring new export markets beyond North America. Manufacturers are also rethinking their supply chains, looking for ways to produce goods entirely within Canada to reduce reliance on US imports. If successful, this shift could revitalize Canada's manufacturing sector, creating jobs and driving innovation. While some industries see opportunity, others are bracing for turbulence. Small businesses that depend on American customers fear that if tariffs take effect, price increases could make their products unaffordable for US buyers, putting their livelihoods at risk. But the stakes go beyond economics. The very foundation of North American trade is being called into question. Just a few years ago, Canada, the US, and Mexico renegotiated their trade agreement to establish the USMCA. Now, with tensions rising, some are wondering if that deal will hold. A 30-day pause on tariff enforcement has given both countries a brief window to step back from the brink of economic conflict. Instead of rushing into a trade war, leaders have an opportunity to negotiate. For Canada, that means demonstrating its economic importance while also addressing US concerns, including border security and efforts to combat illegal drug trafficking. The economic relationship between Canada and the US is like a long-standing marriage, built on trust, mutual benefit, and decades of shared history. But with tensions mounting, both sides must decide whether to mend the rift or let it deepen. Now, if you like this video, check out this next video right here.